Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey back in time, to an era where colossal stone structures dominated the landscape, serving not just as formidable bastions of defense but as the pulsating heart of entire communities. We're talking about medieval castles, those majestic, often brooding, guardians of history that continue to ignite our imaginations and curiosity even centuries later. From the stoic grandeur of Warwick Castle to the ethereal beauty of Neuschwanstein, though a later romantic interpretation, it captures the essence. Castles are more than just old buildings. They are silent witnesses to a bygone age of chivalry, hardship, power, and often, profound mystery. So, before you settle in, maybe grab a warm drink, and if you're enjoying these deep dives into history, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. It truly helps me bring more content like this to you. And as always, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's fascinating to connect with our global community. Now, dim the lights, perhaps turn on some ambient sounds of a crackling fire or distant thunder, and let's ease into tonight's immersive experience. Our first stop is to truly understand what a medieval castle was. It's not just any fortified building. The term primarily refers to fortified residences built by lords, kings, and powerful nobles, predominantly in Europe and the Middle East, spanning roughly from the 10th to the 16th centuries. This period, often romanticized and equally demonized, saw the castle evolve from simple earthworks and wooden palisades into complex, multi-layered stone fortresses. Geographically, these structures were ubiquitous across Western Europe, from the rugged coastlines of Ireland and Scotland to the sun-drenched plains of Spain, and eastward into the Holy Land during the Crusades. Each region, each lord, each era left its unique architectural signature, but the core purpose remained: protection, projection of power, and centralizing control. Imagine standing before one of these colossal edifices. What strikes you first? Is it the sheer scale, the imposing height of the walls that seem to scrape the sky, or the formidable thickness of the stone that whispers tales of impenetrable strength? Beyond the visual, a medieval castle would have assaulted all your senses. The air would be thick with the smell of wood smoke curling from countless hearths, mingling with the earthy scent of straw, the pungent tang of animal waste from the stables and courtyards, and the faint, ever-present odor of unwashed bodies. You might hear the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the whinnying of horses, the bleating of sheep, the excited chatter of children playing, the solemn chanting from the chapel, or perhaps the rhythmic thud of a siege engine in the distance. These were not silent monuments. They were bustling, living organisms, teeming with life, noise, and activity. At its heart, the castle was the epicenter of feudal society. It wasn't just a home for the lord and his family. It was the seat of his power, the administrative hub for his lands, and the ultimate refuge for his peasantry in times of danger. For the common folk living in surrounding villages, the castle represented both protection and oppression. It was where justice was dispensed, often brutally, where taxes were collected, and where loyalty was demanded. The lord of the castle held immense authority, wielding both military might and judicial power. His decisions affected every aspect of life for those under his dominion, from their harvests to their marriages, from their freedom to their very lives. Over the centuries, the design of castles underwent remarkable transformations, driven by evolving military tactics and technological advancements. Early castles, known as motte and bailey castles, were relatively simple. They consisted of a raised earthen mound, the motte, topped by a wooden keep or tower, and an enclosed courtyard, the bailey, protected by a ditch and palisade. These were quick to construct and effective against early forms of attack, but vulnerable to fire and determined assault. As time progressed and siege warfare became more sophisticated, stone castles began to emerge. Initially, these often mirrored the motte and bailey design, but with the wooden structures replaced by more durable stone. The keep, or dungeon, became the most heavily fortified part, often serving as the lord's residence, the last line of defense, and housing the castle's most vital stores. These keeps could be square, rectangular, or even cylindrical, with immensely thick walls designed to withstand battering rams and early siege engines. By the 13th century, we see the rise of concentric castles, exemplified by the castles built by Edward I in Wales, like Conwy or Harlech. These were revolutionary in their design, featuring multiple rings of defensive walls, one inside the other. If an outer wall was breached, attackers would face another, equally formidable, inner wall. This layered defense, combined with sophisticated gatehouses, numerous towers, and strategically placed arrow slits, made them incredibly difficult to take. Every curve, every tower, every gate was designed with a single, overriding purpose: to repel the enemy. The construction of these monumental structures was an immense undertaking, requiring vast resources, immense labor, and sophisticated knowledge. Stone was quarried, often locally, and transported by oxen or cart. Timber, essential for scaffolding, roofs, and internal structures, was felled from nearby forests. Tens, sometimes hundreds, of skilled masons, carpenters, blacksmiths, and laborers would work for years, even decades, to bring a single castle to fruition. Their efforts were not merely about stacking stones. It was a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and the sheer will of the ruling class. In the coming parts of this series, we will delve deeper into each facet of this complex world. We will explore the ingenious architectural defenses that made these fortresses seemingly impregnable. We will step inside the great halls and private chambers to understand the daily lives of the lords and ladies who ruled within, and journey into the bustling kitchens and crowded courtyards to discover the lives of the countless servants and artisans who kept the castle alive. We'll even touch upon the harsh realities of medieval health and hygiene, the pervasive role of religion, and the surprisingly vibrant cultural life that flourished amidst the stone and steel. And, as we traverse this rich tapestry of medieval life, we will inevitably encounter the chilling whispers of the past, the persistent legends of ghosts and spirits that are inextricably linked to these ancient stones. For within these formidable walls, not only history was forged, but also stories, often tragic, that refused to be forgotten. These are the foundations upon which countless tales, both real and supernatural, have been built. We're going to peel back the layers of mystique and delve into the very sinews of the castle, its architectural genius. This isn't just about pretty stonework. It's about centuries of evolving engineering, tactical brilliance, and the sheer human will to build structures that could withstand the most brutal sieges imaginable. Now, let's fortify our minds and explore the unyielding design of these mighty fortresses. From the very first spade of earth dug for a motte and bailey to the complex concentric rings of a late medieval masterpiece, every element of a castle's design served a singular, paramount purpose: defense. These were not just homes, they were war machines crafted from stone, timber, and ingenuity. The architects and engineers of the Middle Ages, though often anonymous to history, were masters of their craft, understanding physics, geometry, and human psychology to create intimidating and resilient structures. Let's start with the most obvious and foundational element: the walls. More than just barriers, castle walls were massive, often several meters thick at the base, tapering as they rose. This thickness wasn't just for brute strength, it provided insulation against the elements, and crucially, a stable platform for defenders. The walls were topped with crenellations, often mistakenly called battlements. This specific term refers to the alternating sequence of solid upstands, merlons, and gaps, crenels or embrasures. Defenders could shelter behind the merlons while firing arrows or crossbow bolts through the crenels, offering both protection and offensive capability. Below the crenels, Especially on the more advanced castles, you'd find machicolations. These were projecting stone galleries or platforms built out from the top of the walls, with openings in their floors. Imagine the terror of attackers trying to scale a wall, only to have boiling water, hot sand, heavy stones, or even quicklime poured down upon them from above, unseen and unhindered. Machicolations were a late but deadly innovation, making scaling ladders or direct assault much more perilous. Further down the walls, and sometimes integrated into towers, were arrow slits or loopholes. These narrow vertical openings, often flaring inwards to allow a wider field of fire for archers, were designed to be almost impenetrable from the outside while allowing defenders to shoot with relative safety. Some advanced arrow slits even had cross-shaped openings for crossbows, allowing for horizontal and vertical aiming. The towers were another critical defensive component. The central, dominant tower was typically the keep, or dungeon in French. This was the castle's ultimate stronghold, often the tallest and most heavily fortified section. It served as the lord's private residence, the command center during a siege, and a secure storage area for provisions, weapons, and valuables. Keep designs varied widely. Early Norman keeps were often square or rectangular, like the formidable White Tower of the Tower of London. Later, cylindrical keeps, like the one at Conisbrough Castle, became popular because they offered no blind spots to battering rams and were more resistant to undermining. Beyond the central keep, numerous other towers were integrated into the curtain walls, providing flanking fire along the wall face and additional defensive positions. Each tower acted as a mini-fortress, often with its own stores and defensive capabilities, meaning even if one section of wall fell, the towers could still hold out. Access to the castle was perhaps its most vulnerable point, making the gatehouse an intricate marvel of defensive engineering. It was rarely a simple archway. Instead, gatehouses evolved into complex death traps. Attackers would first face a drawbridge, which could be quickly raised to deny entry, often spanning a moat, a ditch, usually filled with water, that encircled the castle. If they somehow crossed, they would then encounter a formidable portcullis, a heavy, vertically closing grid gate, usually made of wood reinforced with iron, that could be dropped quickly to trap attackers in a narrow passage. Often, there were multiple portcullises, creating a series of inner and outer traps. The passage through the gatehouse itself was a gauntlet. It was typically long, narrow, and often contained murder holes, small openings in the ceiling from which missiles could be dropped, arrow slits lining the sides, and strong, barricaded doors. Beyond the main gatehouse, some castles also featured a barbican, an outwork or fortified gateway positioned in front of the main gate, creating an additional layer of defense and forcing attackers into an exposed approach. This complex system ensured that even if the gate was breached, the cost to the attacking force would be devastating. The choice of materials and construction methods was paramount. Stone, primarily, was the material of choice due to its strength, fire resistance, and durability. Local stone was preferred to minimize transport costs, but sometimes specialized stone was brought from afar. The construction process was painstaking. Stones were cut, often by hand, and fitted together without mortar in some early examples, though mortar, a mix of lime, sand, and water, became standard for binding stones and sealing joints. Scaffolding was erected using timber, and large stones were lifted into place using rudimentary cranes and levers powered by human or animal muscle. The work was slow, dangerous, and required a vast, skilled workforce: masons, carpenters, blacksmiths, laborers, and quarrymen, often working year-round, regardless of weather. The evolution of castle design was a direct response to advancements in siege warfare. As offensive technology improved, from simple scaling ladders to powerful trebuchets and eventually, Gunpowder artillery. Castle builders continually adapted. Early castles focused on height and simple wall strength. Later designs emphasized concentricity, multiple lines of defense, and the elimination of dead zones where attackers could find shelter. The introduction of the trebuchet in the 12th and 13th centuries, capable of hurling massive projectiles, led to thicker, lower walls and rounded towers that were less vulnerable to direct impact. Ultimately, the advent of gunpowder artillery in the late Middle Ages signaled the beginning of the end for the traditional medieval castle as a primary defensive structure. Cannonballs could simply pulverize stone walls that had once seemed invincible, leading to the development of star forts and other, lower, thicker fortifications designed to deflect cannon fire. In essence, a medieval castle was a living, breathing testament to medieval engineering and military strategy. Every wall, every tower, every gate, every arrow slit was a carefully considered component in a grand, defensive masterpiece. These structures were designed not just to repel an enemy, but to intimidate them, to exhaust them, and to break their will. They embody an era where physical strength and strategic positioning were paramount, where the ability to build and defend such a fortress determined the very survival of a noble house or a kingdom. As we move forward, understanding this architectural backbone will provide the essential context for everything else that unfolded within these walls. Because behind these unyielding stones, there was a vibrant, complex, and often brutal human drama playing out. We're going to pass through those stout gates and step into the heart of the castle's power dynamic, the lives of the lord and lady. These were the figures at the apex of the castle's social pyramid, whose decisions shaped the destinies of hundreds, if not thousands, of people. Their lives, while often romanticized in tales of chivalry and courtly love, were far from simple, filled with a complex blend of privilege, responsibility, and constant pressure. The lord of the castle, whether a duke, count, baron, or simply a knight with significant holdings, was far more than just a landlord. He was the linchpin of his local society, a figure whose authority extended over his lands, his vassals, and his tenants. His day-to-day life, while varying based on his wealth, status, and the prevailing political climate, was a demanding blend of administration, military oversight, and social obligation. His primary responsibility was the defense of his lands and people. This wasn't a passive duty. It involved maintaining the castle's defenses, ensuring a ready supply of arms and men, and leading his knights into battle when called upon by his king, or when his own territories were threatened. A lord who failed in this sacred duty risked not only his reputation but his very existence. Beyond military matters, the lord was also the chief administrator and judge. His great hall often served as the local courtroom where disputes between tenants were settled, crimes judged, and punishments meted out. He had to be well versed in local customs, feudal law, and often rudimentary accounting to manage his estates. This meant poring over rent rolls, supervising stewards, overseeing agricultural output, and ensuring that the castle's coffers were sufficiently stocked to support its garrison and household. Imagine the weight of these responsibilities: ensuring justice for all, defending your people from external threats, and managing a complex economic enterprise, all without the aid of modern bureaucracy or communication. The lady of the castle, far from being a mere decorative figure, played an equally crucial and often underestimated role. While the lord was frequently away on campaigns, hunting, or attending the king's court, it was the lady who often managed the day-to-day operations of the castle and its surrounding estates. She was, in many respects, the chief executive officer of the household. Her responsibilities were vast and varied. Household management. This included overseeing the numerous servants, managing the castle's extensive stores of food, wine, and other provisions, and ensuring the smooth functioning of the kitchen, laundry, and general upkeep. estate oversight. She would often manage the agricultural output of the domain lands, those directly controlled by the lord, overseeing planting, harvesting, and livestock. She might even be involved in negotiating with merchants and managing the castle's finances in her husband's absence. Healthcare and education. The lady was often responsible for the health and well-being of the castle's inhabitants, possessing knowledge of medicinal herbs and rudimentary nursing. She also oversaw the education of her own children, as well as the young nobles sent to the castle for fostering. Social and spiritual life. She hosted guests, organized feasts, and often played a significant role in the castle's spiritual life, working closely with the chaplain. The education of a young noble, whether a lord or a lady, began early and was intensely practical. Boys were trained from a young age in the arts of warfare, horsemanship, and hunting, skills vital for their future roles as knights and commanders. They would start as pages, then progress to squires, serving a knight and learning directly from him, before eventually being knighted themselves. Girls, on the other hand, received an education focused on household management, religious instruction, basic literacy, often, and the social graces necessary for running a noble household and making a good match. Many ladies were surprisingly literate and articulate, capable of running complex households and even defending castles in their husband's absence. Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the most powerful women of the Middle Ages, is a shining example of a lady who wielded immense political influence. While their lives were undoubtedly demanding, the lord and lady also enjoyed periods of recreation and leisure. Hunting was a favorite pastime for both sexes, serving not only as sport but also as a practical means of acquiring meat for the table and training for warfare. Falconry, a sophisticated art, was another popular activity. Inside the castle, entertainment might include board games like chess or tables, a precursor to backgammon, storytelling, music played by resident minstrels, and perhaps even early forms of theater. Tournaments, elaborate spectacles of martial prowess and chivalry, were major social events, drawing nobles from far and wide and offering opportunities for knights to prove their skill and bravery. These events were not just entertainment. They reinforced the social hierarchy and provided valuable training for war. Fashion and attire among the nobility were clear indicators of status and wealth. Noble clothing was made from finer materials like silk, velvet, and brocade, often imported and dyed in vibrant colors. Layers were common, and garments were often adorned with embroidery, jewels, and furs. The ladies' elaborate gowns, often with long trains and wide sleeves, were impractical for labor but perfect for displaying wealth and grace. The lord's tunics, cloaks, and hose, while more practical for riding and military exercises, were still made from high-quality fabrics and embellished to reflect his standing. Cleanliness, while not meeting modern standards, was still a concern, with nobles often using scented oils and perfumes to mask odors, and bathing, though less frequent than today, was still practiced. Food and feasting were central to noble life, signifying hospitality, status, and power. The lord and lady presided over elaborate banquets in the great hall, especially on feast days and special occasions. These meals were not just about sustenance. They were social events, opportunities to impress guests, forge alliances, and reinforce loyalty. The food itself would be rich and varied, featuring roasted meats, wild game, beef, pork, fish, bread, cheeses, and often elaborate pastries. Spices, a luxury from the East, were used liberally to demonstrate wealth. While alcohol was consumed widely, wine was the drink of choice for the nobility, while ale and cider were more common among the lower ranks. These feasts showcased the lord's ability to provide, and the abundance reflected directly on his prestige. Marriage and family life among the nobility were rarely about romantic love in the modern sense. Marriages were strategic alliances, designed to consolidate power, gain land, or secure political advantage. Daughters were valuable pawns in these intricate political games, often betrothed from childhood. Despite this pragmatic approach, genuine affection could and often did develop within these arranged marriages. c. Infant mortality was tragically high, making every surviving child a precious commodity. We're going to follow our noses deep into the most aromatic and arguably most vital part of any functioning castle: the kitchens and the grand banquets that emerged from them. This wasn't just about cooking, it was about power, prestige, and survival, a fascinating blend of practicality and elaborate showmanship. So, prepare your palates, because we're about to explore the culinary heart of the medieval castle. The castle kitchen was far more than a simple room. It was a sprawling, smoky, and often chaotic hub, typically located in a separate building or a wing away from the main living quarters to minimize the risk of fire. This separation also helped to contain the heat, noise, and smells inherent to such a busy operation. Inside, the sheer scale of the equipment would be astounding to modern eyes. Imagine massive open hearths, large enough to roast an entire ox, equipped with enormous spits turned by a spit boy, or even a specially trained dog on a treadmill, a turnspit dog. There would be huge cauldrons hanging over fires, capable of boiling vast quantities of stew, soup, or pottage. Work tables would be heavy and sturdy, designed for chopping, pounding, and preparing ingredients on an industrial scale. Storage areas, larders, and cellars would be dark, cool spaces, often underground, where provisions were kept safe from spoilage and vermin. The challenges of running a medieval kitchen were immense. There was no refrigeration, so preservation methods like salting, smoking, pickling, and drying were crucial. Fresh ingredients were highly prized but often scarce, especially in winter. The castle kitchen operated year-round, preparing 2 main meals a day, dinner around midday and supper in the late afternoon, for potentially hundreds of people, from the lord and his family to the lowest stable hand. So, where did all this food come from? The castle was typically supplied by its own domain lands, the lord's direct holdings, worked by his tenants and serfs. This meant that much of the food was locally sourced. Agriculture, grains like wheat, barley, and oats were staples, used for bread, ale, and pottage. Vegetables like cabbages, onions, leeks, and beans were grown in castle gardens or on nearby farms. Livestock, cattle, pigs, sheep, and poultry provided meat, milk, cheese, and eggs. Pigs were particularly valuable as they could be fattened on forest forage and then easily salted for winter preservation. Hunting and fishing, for the nobility. Hunting was not just a sport but a significant source of protein. Deer, boar, rabbits, and various game birds found their way to the castle table. Rivers and ponds within the lord's domain provided fish, a crucial food source, especially during Lent and other religious fast days when meat was forbidden. Trade. While self-sufficient, castles also relied on trade for luxuries and items not produced locally. Spices from the east, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, saffron, salt, a vital preservative, and fine wines were imported and represented significant investments, reflecting the lord's wealth and influence. Medieval culinary techniques might seem simple, but they were remarkably sophisticated given the limitations. Roasting and boiling were common, but dishes could also be fried, baked, or stewed. Meats were often highly seasoned with the aforementioned expensive spices, partly to mask any slight spoilage, but primarily to demonstrate wealth and add flavor. Dishes were frequently pureed, minced, or pounded into pastes, then reformed into elaborate shapes, especially for banquets. Food presentation, even without modern tools, could be surprisingly artistic, designed to impress. For example, subtlety were elaborate food sculptures, often depicting mythological creatures, scenes from history, or heraldic symbols, designed to entertain as much as to be eaten. Now, let's talk about banquets. These were not just meals, they were grand theatrical productions, central to the social and political life of the castle. Held in the Great Hall, they were opportunities for the lord to display his wealth, generosity, and power, to entertain important guests, forge alliances, and reinforce his authority over his vassals and household. Setting the scene, the Great Hall would be meticulously prepared. Tables, often long trestle tables, would be set up, covered with fine linens. The lord and lady would sit at the high table on a raised dais, signifying their elevated status. The rest of the household and guests would be seated according to their rank. Tapestries might be hung to add warmth and decoration, and torches or candles would illuminate the vast space. The food procession, the serving of food, was a ritual in itself. Dishes would be brought from the kitchen in a grand procession, often accompanied by music from minstrels. Servants would carry massive platters laden with roasted meats, pies, and other delicacies, parading them before the high table before distributing them. Etiquette and entertainment, dining etiquette, though different from today, was important. Diners would eat with knives and spoons. Forks were a very late medieval introduction and initially viewed with suspicion. Food was often eaten by hand. Entertainment was integral to the feast, minstrels playing lutes, harps, and flutes, jesters performing comedic acts, acrobats, and storytellers reciting epics or romantic tales. Even hunting dogs might roam the hall, scavenging scraps. The drinks, ale and cider, were everyday drinks for most, while wine was reserved for the nobility and special occasions. The butler meticulously managed the flow of beverages, ensuring that no guest of importance went thirsty. Sweet wines, often spiced, were served towards the end of the meal. Feasts were also significant religious and social occasions. Major holidays like Christmas, Easter, and Michaelmas were celebrated with lavish banquets that could last for days, bringing together the entire castle community and often many from the surrounding villages. These events helped to knit the social fabric of the lord's domain, fostering a sense of shared identity and loyalty. The psychological impact of such feasts was profound. For the common folk, witnessing such abundance was a reminder of the lord's power and generosity, reinforcing his legitimacy. For the nobility, it was an opportunity for networking, displaying their own status, and engaging in courtly rituals that defined their elite world. The sheer volume of food, the exotic spices, the glittering tableware, if available, and the constant flow of entertainment created an immersive experience designed to awe and impress. In summary, the castle kitchen was the unsung hero of medieval life, a place of hard labor and logistical mastery, providing the sustenance for everyone within the walls. And the banquets that emerged from it were more than just meals. They were powerful statements of wealth, hospitality, and social order, crucial events that bound the castle community together and reinforced the lord's dominion. From the basic need for food to the theatrical spectacle of a feast, the culinary life of the castle was a vibrant and complex part of its very essence. However, we shift gears dramatically. We are moving from the everyday rhythm of castle life to its most intense and perilous reality: war and defense, particularly during a siege. For all its grandeur, its feasts, and its bustling court, the medieval castle was, at its very core, a fortress, a machine designed for battle. It was during a siege that the castle truly proved its worth, becoming a crucible where the courage of its defenders and the ingenuity of its builders were put to the ultimate test. Your engagement keeps this historical journey alive. So, prepare. A castle, however mighty its walls, was only as good as its preparation. When intelligence of an approaching enemy force, or the declaration of war, reached the lord, the entire castle would spring into a frantic state of readiness. The first, and most crucial, step was stockpiling supplies. Every possible space within the castle, cellars, storerooms, towers, even empty rooms, would be filled to the brim with provisions, grain, salted meats, dried fish, cheese, and enormous quantities of ale and wine. Water sources, often wells within the keep or courtyard, would be secured. Fuel for fires, medical supplies, rudimentary though they were, and a vast array of weaponry and ammunition, arrows, crossbow bolts, stones for catapults, would be brought within the walls. Livestock from the surrounding lands would be herded into the outer bailey, to be either slaughtered and salted or kept as a fresh, if vulnerable, food source. Simultaneously, the castle's defenses would be strengthened. Any temporary structures outside the main walls would be dismantled or burned to deny cover to the enemy. Moats would be deepened, palisades repaired, and outer bailies reinforced. Siege engines like trebuchets or catapults, if possessed by the defenders, would be positioned. The garrison, knights, men-at-arms, archers, and crossbowmen, would be brought to full strength, often supplemented by able-bodied peasants from the surrounding villages seeking refuge and offering their services. The lord and his constable would meticulously plan the defense, assigning positions, establishing watch rotations, and ensuring clear lines of command. When the enemy arrived, often announced by trumpets and the rumble of their own siege engines, the atmosphere inside the castle would become one of tense anticipation. The initial phase of a siege was often a blockade, where the attackers would attempt to starve out the defenders by cutting off all supply lines. This was a war of attrition, relying on patience and the dwindling resources of the besieged. If starvation didn't work, the attackers would resort to more aggressive tactics. The tactics of attackers were varied and brutal. Direct assault, storming. This involved overwhelming the defenses with sheer numbers, using scaling ladders to mount walls, or battering rams to break down gates. This was incredibly costly in terms of lives for the attackers, but if successful, it could end the siege quickly. Siege engines, battering rams, massive tree trunks, often with an iron head, swung or pushed against gates or weaker sections of walls. They were often protected by a movable roof, a tortoise, to shield the operators. Siege towers, tall, wheeled wooden towers, often as high as the castle walls, pushed forward to allow attackers to bridge the gap and storm the battlements directly. They were extremely vulnerable to fire. Catapults and trebuchets, these powerful artillery pieces could hurl massive stones, diseased animal carcasses, or even flaming projectiles over walls, aiming to damage structures, spread disease, or demoralize defenders. The trebuchet, in particular, was a highly efficient and devastating weapon. Ballistas, giant crossbow-like weapons designed to fire large bolts or spears with immense force. Mining, sapping. Attackers would tunnel beneath castle walls or towers, shoring up their tunnels with timber, then setting the timber on fire. The resulting collapse of the tunnel would undermine the foundations, causing the wall above to crumble. This was a slow and dangerous process, often requiring specialized sappers. Undermining walls, countermining defenders, upon realizing they were being mined, would dig their own tunnels to intercept the attackers, leading to fierce underground battles. The tactics of defense were equally ingenious and often desperate. Archery and crossbow fire. From the relative safety of arrow slits and crenels, defenders would unleash volleys of arrows and bolts, targeting exposed attackers, especially those operating siege engines. Throwing weapons, stones, rocks, and javelins would be hurled from the ramparts. Boiling liquids and projectiles, boiling water, hot sand, quicklime, or even molten lead could be poured through machicolations or over the battlements, causing horrific burns and blinding. Large pots of oil or pitch could be heated and poured down. Repelling ladders, Defenders used long poles or grappling hooks to push away or overturn scaling ladders. Repairing walls. During lulls in fighting, or even under fire, masons and laborers would desperately attempt to repair damaged walls and clear debris. Sorties. Small groups of defenders would make sudden, swift attacks out of the castle gates, aiming to destroy siege engines, harass enemy troops, or capture supplies, before retreating quickly back within the walls. These were risky but could significantly disrupt an attacker's plans. Psychological warfare. Both sides would engage in psychological tactics, taunting, displaying captured banners, or even firing heads of enemies into the castle to demoralize the besieged. Life within the castle during a siege was a harrowing ordeal. Fear, anxiety, and exhaustion would be constant companions. Food and water rations would dwindle, leading to hunger and thirst. Disease, fueled by poor sanitation and overcrowding, could spread rapidly, sometimes claiming more lives than the fighting itself. The constant bombardment, the screams of the wounded, and the sight of comrades falling would take a heavy toll on morale. Yet, even in such desperate circumstances, the communal spirit, reinforced by shared danger and religious faith, often held the defenders together. The Lord's presence and leadership were critical. A resolute Lord could inspire his people to hold out against incredible odds. Famous sieges punctuate medieval history, demonstrating both the power and the ultimate vulnerability of castles. The Siege of Acre, 1189 to 1191, during the Third Crusade, for instance, saw both besiegers and besieged suffer immensely, showcasing the prolonged agony of medieval warfare. The Siege of Harlech Castle, 1461 to 1468, during the Wars of the Roses was one of the longest in British history, illustrating the incredible endurance required to hold a fortress. Each siege was a unique drama, a testament to human resilience, brutality, and strategic genius. Ultimately, while many castles were deemed impregnable, few were truly invincible. Most sieges ended not by direct assault, but by starvation, disease, or betrayal. A determined and well-supplied attacking force, given enough time, could usually break even the strongest defenses. The castle's role evolved as gunpowder artillery became more sophisticated, rendering traditional stone walls obsolete. However, for centuries, the castle stood as the ultimate symbol of defense, a stone behemoth that dictated the course of medieval warfare and safeguarded its inhabitants from the relentless perils of a turbulent age. We turn our attention to an even deeper, more pervasive force that influenced the medieval mind and structured daily existence: religion and spirituality. For the people of the Middle Ages, life inside the castle, just like life outside it, was deeply intertwined with the Church, with faith, and with a constant awareness of the divine. This wasn't just a Sunday affair. It was the very bedrock of their worldview, dictating morality, offering solace, and inspiring both devotion and fear. Let's delve into the sacred spaces and fervent beliefs that permeated the very stones of the medieval castle. In the medieval period, Christianity, specifically Roman Catholicism in Western Europe, was not merely a set of beliefs. It was the fundamental framework of society. Every aspect of life, from the rhythms of the day to the great political events, was understood through a Christian lens. For the inhabitants of a castle, this meant that the church was an ever-present, highly influential institution, often physically represented within the castle walls by a chapel or even a larger church. The castle chapel was more than just a place of worship. It was a sanctuary, a quiet retreat from the constant bustle and harsh realities of castle life. It was here that the Lord, his family, and often the entire household would gather for daily mass, prayers, and religious observances. For the Lord and Lady, their personal piety was not just a private matter. It was a public display of devotion that underscored their legitimacy and authority, as their rule was believed to be divinely ordained. Even if a lord was notoriously ruthless, he would almost certainly dedicate resources to the chapel and attend services, understanding the social and spiritual necessity of doing so. Presiding over these spiritual matters was the chaplain. This was a vital role within the castle court. The chaplain was a consecrated priest, responsible for conducting all religious services, administering sacraments, like baptism, confession, and last rites, and providing spiritual guidance to the castle's inhabitants. His duties were diverse. Liturgical services, daily mass, vespers, matins, and other prayers according to the liturgical calendar. Pastoral care, offering comfort to the sick and dying, hearing confessions, and providing counsel on moral and spiritual matters. Education. Often, the chaplain was the most educated person in the castle and would serve as a tutor for the lord's children, teaching them Latin, basic literacy, and religious doctrine. Record keeping. In some cases, the chaplain might also be responsible for keeping records of births, deaths, and marriages within the castle and its immediate domain. The presence of the chaplain in the chapel underscored the belief that God's favor was essential for the castle's prosperity and defense. Prayers would be offered for successful harvests, for victory in battle, and for protection from disease. During a siege, the chaplain's role became even more critical, offering spiritual solace, maintaining morale, and reminding the besieged of divine providence in the face of overwhelming odds. Religious holidays and festivals punctuated the medieval calendar and were celebrated with great solemnity and often, as we saw in Part 5, lavish feasts. Christmas, Easter, Pentecost, and the feast days of various saints were not just days off, they were deeply meaningful spiritual observances. These periods offered a rhythm to life that transcended the everyday grind, providing moments for communal worship, reflection, and celebration. Fasting, particularly during Lent and on Fridays, was also a common practice, a form of penance and discipline. Beyond the formal rituals, faith permeated everyday life and thought. Superstition and genuine religious belief often coexisted. People believed in heaven, hell, purgatory, angels, demons, and the constant spiritual battle between good and evil. Sickness might be seen as God's punishment, a bad harvest as divine displeasure, and a victory in battle as God's blessing. This worldview fostered a deep sense of humility and reliance on divine will, even among the most powerful lords. Relics played a significant role in medieval devotion. These were physical objects associated with saints or holy figures, fragments of bone, pieces of clothing, or items they had touched. Castles, especially those of powerful or pious lords, might possess their own relics, often housed in the chapel. These relics were believed to possess spiritual power, offering protection, healing, or intercession with God. Pilgrimages to sites with particularly potent relics were common, often undertaken by nobles as a sign of penance or seeking divine favor. The presence of a relic within the castle added to its sacred aura and perceived protection. The intertwined relationship between the lord and the local ecclesiastical authority, bishops, abbots of nearby monasteries, was also crucial. Lords often founded monasteries or churches on their lands, granting them endowments in exchange for prayers for their souls and the souls of their ancestors. This was a form of spiritual insurance, but also a way to gain prestige and influence. Conversely, the church held significant power over the nobility, capable of excommunication, which could strip a lord of his authority and loyalty from his vassals, or interdiction, suspending religious services in a region, deeply unsettling the populace. This dynamic ensured that even powerful lords paid heed to the church's doctrines and demands. Moreover, the castle often served as a place of refuge for traveling clerics, monks, and friars. These individuals brought news from the wider world, offered spiritual guidance, and sometimes even provided medical care or shared knowledge of distant lands. Their visits reinforced the castle's connection to the broader Christian world. In summary, religion was not an optional extra in the medieval castle. It was the very fabric of existence, shaping morality, daily routines, and ultimate hopes. The chapel, the chaplain, and the daily rituals of faith provided a spiritual anchor for a life that was often harsh, unpredictable, and violent. The pervasive influence of the Church, combined with deeply held personal beliefs, offered both a moral compass and a source of profound solace for everyone within the castle walls, from the powerful lord to the lowliest servant. Having explored the spiritual dimension, we now turn to the more secular, yet equally enriching, aspects of castle life, education, and culture. We'll discover that despite the image of a purely martial society, medieval castles were also centers of learning, music, and entertainment, fostering a surprising vibrancy of intellectual and artistic pursuits. We pivot from the sacred to the more secular pursuits, exploring education and culture, books, music, and entertainment. This will reveal a surprisingly vibrant and sophisticated side of castle life, far beyond the image of brute force and constant conflict. While the primary function of a medieval castle was military and administrative, it was far from a cultural wasteland. Indeed, many castles, especially those of powerful and enlightened lords, became significant centers of learning, artistic patronage, and entertainment. This might seem counterintuitive given the often harsh realities we've discussed, but culture provided solace, diversion, and a crucial means of expressing status and identity. Education for the nobility was a nuanced affair, blending practical skills with intellectual pursuits. For boys, as we briefly touched upon in Part 3, the emphasis was heavily on martial training from a young age. They learned horsemanship, swordsmanship, archery, and the strategies of warfare. Physical prowess, courage, and loyalty were paramount virtues instilled through rigorous training, first as pages and then as squires. However, this did not necessarily mean an absence of intellectual training. Many noble boys also received instruction in literacy. While not universal, the ability to read and write was increasingly valued, especially for managing complex estates and engaging in diplomacy. Latin was often taught, as it was the language of the church, law, and international communication. Courtly manners and etiquette, crucial for navigating the complex social world of the nobility, including dancing, proper address, and social graces. History and heraldry, knowledge of their family lineage, the history of their lands, and the intricate rules of heraldry, the system of coats of arms, was vital for understanding their place in the feudal hierarchy. Law, basic understanding of feudal law and local customs was essential for a future lord who would administer justice. For noble girls, their education focused more on household management, religious instruction, and the cultivation of domestic and social skills. They learned to sew, embroider, manage servants, oversee provisions, and often, rudimentary medical knowledge through herbalism. While less emphasis was placed on formal literacy for girls, many noblewomen were literate, capable of reading religious texts, managing household accounts, and engaging in correspondence. Some, like Eleanor of Aquitaine, were highly educated patrons of the arts and culture. The fostering system, where children were sent to live and be educated in other noble households, also played a significant role in their development, exposing them to different customs and forging important social connections. Music and storytelling were integral to castle life, serving both as entertainment and as a means of transmitting history, legends, and social values. Minstrels and bards. These professional entertainers were highly valued members of the castle court. Minstrels traveled from castle to castle, bringing news, gossip, and a vast repertoire of songs, poems, and instrumental pieces. They played instruments like lutes, harps, flutes, and early forms of violins. Bards, particularly in Celtic cultures, held an even more elevated status, acting as oral historians, genealogists, and composers of epic poems celebrating the deeds of their lords. Chivalric romances and ballads, these narrative poems and songs, often performed by minstrels, celebrated themes of courtly love, knightly heroism, and adventure. They were immensely popular and shaped the ideals of medieval nobility. Religious music. As we discussed in Part 8, sacred music was a constant presence, from the chanting of psalms in the chapel to hymns sung during feasts. Games and leisure activities provided much-needed diversion from the rigors of castle life. Board games. Chess was immensely popular among the nobility, valued for its strategic complexity. Tables. An early form of backgammon, was also widely played. Dice games, though often associated with gambling, were common as well. Hunting and falconry. These were not just practical ways to acquire food but highly ritualized sports that trained nobility in horsemanship, tracking, and the use of weapons. Falconry, in particular, was a refined art, requiring immense patience and skill in training birds of prey. Tournaments. While primarily a form of martial training, tournaments, jousting, melees were also spectacular social events, drawing crowds and offering opportunities for knights to display their prowess, win fame, and sometimes earn valuable prizes. They were a crucial part of courtly culture and a major form of public entertainment. Dances. While often simple, dances were performed during feasts and celebrations, contributing to the communal atmosphere. The growth of manuscript culture was also evident in many castles. While not universal, the wealthiest lords might possess small but precious libraries. These would contain religious texts, Bibles, psalters, books of hours, chronicles, historical records, and increasingly, secular literature like romances and classical works. The production of illuminated manuscripts, beautifully handwritten and illustrated books, was a highly skilled craft, often performed in monasteries but sometimes commissioned directly by wealthy patrons. These books were not only sources of knowledge but also objects of immense artistic value, treasured possessions. The castle also served as a center for patronage. Lords would often host and support scholars, poets, artists, and craftsmen, bringing intellectual and creative talent to their courts. This patronage not only enhanced the lord's prestige but also contributed to the flourishing of medieval art and thought, particularly in regions like France, England, and the Holy Roman Empire. In summary, while the medieval castle often evokes images of grim fortifications and constant conflict, it was also a place where culture, education, and entertainment flourished. The nobility, though bound by the duties of war and administration, valued intellectual pursuits, cherished music and storytelling, and engaged in various forms of recreation. These cultural dimensions provided a vital balance to the harsh realities of medieval existence, enriching the lives of the castle inhabitants and leaving a legacy of art, literature, and intellectual development that continues to fascinate us today. As our journey through the castle's daily life approaches its conclusion, we must inevitably confront the ultimate aspect of the human condition. We arrive at an inevitable and universal chapter in any human story: death, burial, and the enduring legacy a castle's inhabitants left behind. For all the power, privilege, and daily routine, mortality was a constant companion in the medieval world, shaping beliefs, influencing decisions, and ultimately, defining the final chapter for every soul who called the castle home. So, dim the lights, and let's reflect on the final curtain call within these ancient stones. In the medieval castle, death was not a distant, sanitized event, it was an ever-present reality. Life expectancy was significantly lower than today, particularly due to high infant mortality rates and the prevalence of disease. Even if one survived childhood, the risks of death from injury, childbirth, or the relentless cycle of illness were constant. For the nobility, the threat of death in battle was a very real concern, as were assassinations, political executions, and even accidental deaths during hunting or tournaments. This constant proximity to mortality fostered a deep awareness of the transience of life and the urgency of preparing for the afterlife, heavily influenced by Christian doctrine. When death inevitably claimed someone within the castle, particularly a member of the noble family, it triggered a series of specific death rituals and customs. These practices were deeply rooted in religious belief and social expectations, designed to honor the deceased, prepare their soul for the afterlife, and provide comfort to the living. Last rites. For the dying, the chaplain would be summoned to administer the last rites: confession, anointing of the sick, extreme unction, and Holy Communion. This was considered crucial for the salvation of the soul. Vigil and preparation. After death, the body would be washed, dressed in its finest clothes or a simple shroud, and laid out for a vigil, often in the deceased's bedchamber or the great hall. Family, household members, and sometimes local peasants would come to pay their respects, offer prayers, and mourn. Candles would burn, and prayers might be recited continuously. Mourning. Periods of mourning were formal and strictly observed, often lasting for months or even a year for a lord or lady. Mourning clothes, typically black or dark colors, were worn, and public displays of grief, such as wailing and lamenting, were common, especially among women. The burial location was often dictated by status, piety, and family tradition. Church or monastery. The most common and desired place of burial for nobility was within a local church, cathedral, or, most prestigiously, a monastery that the family had patronized or founded. Burial within the church walls was believed to bring the deceased closer to God and allowed for continuous prayers from the clergy. Crypts beneath the church or elaborate tombs within the nave or chancels were common. Family mausoleums. Some powerful families might have their own dedicated chapels or mausoleums attached to a church, serving as their ancestral burial grounds. Castle burial. While less common for the primary burial of a lord or lady, especially by the later Middle Ages, some individuals might be buried within the castle grounds itself, particularly if there was a strong family tradition or a particular significance to the spot. Sometimes, internal chapels or even the keep might contain small burial vaults or effigies. In times of siege or emergency, temporary burials might occur within the castle if transporting the body was impossible. Tombs and effigies were significant expressions of a family's legacy. Elaborate stone effigies, often depicting the deceased in full armor, for men, or courtly dress for women, would be placed atop their tombs. These monuments were not just memorials. They were public statements of status, power, and piety, designed to ensure that the deceased, and by extension their family, would be remembered and prayed for by future generations. Inscriptions would detail their titles, accomplishments, and virtues. Wills and inheritance were incredibly important, particularly for the lord. Upon his death, the transfer of power and property was a complex legal and social process. Primogeniture, the system by which the eldest legitimate son inherited all of his father's estate and titles, was the norm, designed to prevent the fragmentation of lands and power. Dowries and dower rights. Widows often had dower rights, entitling them to a portion of their deceased husband's estate for their lifetime, ensuring their financial security. Daughters received dowries upon marriage, which were significant sums of money or property transferred to the husband's family. Spiritual provisions. Medieval wills were also intensely spiritual documents. Lords would leave significant bequests to churches, monasteries, and charities, often specifying that masses be said for their souls in perpetuity. This was a crucial means of reducing time in purgatory and ensuring a favorable judgment after death. The castle's legacy was inextricably linked to the family that built and inhabited it. A castle was not just a collection of buildings, it was the embodiment of a noble lineage. Symbol of continuity, its enduring stone walls were a tangible symbol of the family's continuous power and presence across generations. Each new lord inherited not just the physical structure, but the accumulated history, reputation, and perhaps the burdens of his ancestors. Center of identity. For the family, the castle was home, an ancestral seat that defined their identity and place in the world. Its very stones resonated with their triumphs, tragedies, and daily lives. Economic and strategic importance. The castle's long-term survival and prosperity were crucial for the family's wealth and influence. A decaying or abandoned castle signified a decline in the family's fortunes or power. Enduring memory. Even centuries after its original builders were gone, many castles continued to stand, becoming historical landmarks that told stories of past glories and sometimes forgotten sorrows. However, the death of a castle itself was also a common part of the medieval landscape. Abandonment. As strategic needs changed, or families died out, or moved to more comfortable residences, many castles were simply abandoned, left to decay. Demolition. Sometimes, castles were deliberately slighted, destroyed, by victorious enemies to prevent their reuse, or by kings to assert central authority over rebellious lords. Conversion. Others were repurposed, turned into grand country houses, prisons, or even quarries for building materials for new structures. The end of the medieval period, marked by the rise of gunpowder artillery that rendered old stone walls vulnerable, ultimately saw the decline of the castle as a primary defensive stronghold. Yet their legacy persisted. They became monuments, tourist attractions, and powerful symbols of a bygone era, holding within their ancient stones the echoes of countless lives. And it is precisely these echoes, these lingering presences, that form the bridge to the next, more mysterious half of our journey. For when so much life, death, joy, and sorrow transpired within these confines, it is perhaps little wonder that the human imagination, and sometimes, even more, suggested that not all who perished within these walls truly departed. We step through a veil, from the solid facts of history into the shadowy, often chilling, realm where history is said to linger long after its participants have departed, the world of castle ghosts and legends. This is where the factual gives way to the folkloric, where documented tragedies give birth to spectral tales, and where the echoes of the past are believed to take on a life of their own. Why are medieval castles such potent breeding grounds for stories of the supernatural? It's not just their age. It's a confluence of factors that render them ideal canvases for the spectral imagination. Firstly, their history is steeped in drama, violence, and profound human emotion. Castles were not quiet residences. They were often places of immense suffering. They witnessed battles, sieges, torture, executions, betrayal, and unrequited love. When human lives are lived and ended with such intense emotional charge, it's perhaps natural that we imagine some residual energy, some echo, remaining. The sheer volume of life and death contained within these ancient walls creates a rich tapestry for the supernatural to weave itself into. Secondly, castles, by their very nature, were often isolated and imposing structures. Their thick stone walls, deep dungeons, hidden passages, and desolate courtyards provided the perfect atmospheric backdrop for tales of the unknown. The low light, the echoing acoustics, and the sense of being cut off from the outside world could easily play tricks on the mind, turning shadows into figures and creaking timbers into ghostly footsteps. This inherent eeriness, whether perceived or real, amplifies the sense of mystery and dread. Thirdly, the prevailing beliefs of the medieval period heavily influenced how people perceived the world, including the afterlife. Christianity was omnipresent, teaching about souls, heaven, hell, purgatory, and the existence of spiritual beings, both benevolent and malevolent. Ghosts in medieval thought were not always the ethereal, transparent figures we imagine today. They could be tormented souls seeking prayers, demonic entities, or even spirits returning to right a wrong. This cultural acceptance of the supernatural made it easier for ghost stories to take root and spread, not just as mere entertainment but as cautionary tales or even perceived encounters with genuine spiritual phenomena. People were far more inclined to believe in the immediate proximity of the spiritual realm. The distinction between historical truth and folkloric legend often becomes blurred when discussing castle ghosts. Many ghostly tales are indeed rooted in real historical events: a tragic death, a cruel execution, a forgotten prisoner. Over centuries, however, these facts are often embellished, transformed, and passed down through oral tradition, becoming more about the enduring emotional resonance than strict historical accuracy. A princess who died of a broken heart might become a white lady, forever weeping in a tower. A tyrannical lord might return as a black knight, still patrolling his domains. These legends serve a cultural purpose, reflecting local beliefs, moral lessons, or simply capturing the imagination. So, the fundamental question we pose tonight, and indeed for the remainder of this series, is: are these castle ghosts merely products of overactive imaginations, fueled by centuries of dramatic history and a suitable atmosphere? Or do they represent genuine encounters with something truly inexplicable? While direct scientific proof remains elusive, the sheer volume, consistency, and often deeply personal nature of reported sightings and experiences over centuries compel us to look closer. People throughout history, from hardened soldiers to skeptical scholars, have reported encounters they could not explain within these ancient walls. The types of ghostly phenomena reported in castles are as diverse as the castles themselves, but common threads emerge. Apparitions: the visual sighting of a ghostly figure, often resembling a person from a specific historical period, a knight, a lady, a servant. These can be fleeting glimpses or more sustained, detailed appearances. Auditory phenomena: unexplained sounds such as footsteps, whispers, moans, screams, distant battles, or the clanging of chains. Poltergeist activity: the movement of objects, unexplained bangs, knocks, or disturbances in the physical environment. Sensory experiences: unexplained cold spots, sudden changes in temperature, distinct odors, perfume, smoke, decay, or feelings of being watched or touched. These phenomena are often linked to specific areas within a castle, a dungeon, a particular tower, a great hall, or even a hidden passage, suggesting that some places are more active than others, perhaps due to the intensity of the events that occurred there. As we embark on this spectral journey, it's important to approach these tales with a blend of historical context and open-minded curiosity. We will explore specific legends, delve into the historical events that might have inspired them, and consider why certain stories have persisted for so long. We will not seek to prove or disprove their existence, but rather to understand the stories themselves, their origins, and their enduring power to captivate us. For in these tales, whether fact or fiction, lies another layer of the castle's profound legacy. We shift our focus from overt bloodshed to something perhaps even more tantalizing: castle secrets. We will explore the legends of ghosts who are said to linger not because of a violent end, but because they hold vital information, guarding hidden treasures, desperately trying to reveal long-lost knowledge, or silently protesting unresolved injustices and unpunished crimes. These are the spectral custodians of history's deepest, most intriguing mysteries. Medieval castles, with their thick walls, countless rooms, secret passages, and deep cellars, were ideal places for concealment. Lords often had private caches of valuables, hidden documents, or even forgotten prisoners. When a person died with such knowledge unrevealed, or when a crime went unpunished, folklore suggests their spirit might be compelled to remain, forever trying to complete their unfinished business. This gives rise to a compelling category of castle hauntings, where the ghost isn't just a lingering presence but a silent, sometimes desperate, storyteller. Let's begin with the captivating legends of ghosts guarding hidden treasures. Throughout the turbulent medieval period, wealth was often fleeting and insecure. Lords, facing invasion, siege, or political upheaval, would frequently hide their most valuable possessions, gold, silver, jewels, important documents, or even family heirlooms, within the castle walls. These caches were often known only to a trusted few, or sometimes, only to the lord himself. If these individuals died suddenly or without revealing the location of the treasure, the legend holds that their spirits might become bound to the hidden hoard, forever watching over it, or perhaps, trying to lead a worthy person to its location. Imagine the tales: a shimmering figure seen near a crumbling wall, said to be a loyal steward guarding the family jewels buried just beneath the stones. Or a spectral knight, walking through the oldest part of the keep, pointing a ghostly finger towards a section of the floor, hinting at a lost chest of coins. These stories are particularly enticing because they offer the tantalizing possibility of real-world discovery. While most remain just that, stories, they fuel countless local legends and even modern-day treasure hunts, adding a layer of tangible mystery to paranormal investigations. The ghost of a miserly baron, still clutching his earthly wealth, is a powerful archetype, reflecting both greed and loyalty unto death. Then there are the chilling stories of ghosts of prisoners who died in forgotten dungeons or secret cells. In a world without formal records for every detainee, and where political enemies could simply disappear, it was entirely possible for a prisoner to be interred in a hidden cell and left to starve or succumb to disease, their existence never acknowledged. These souls, denied a proper burial or even recognition of their fate, are said to haunt the darkest, most isolated parts of the castle. The Grey Lady of Lumley Castle in England is a classic example. Legend tells of Lady Lily Lumley, who was supposedly thrown down a well by two priests after refusing to convert to Catholicism in the 14th century. Her spirit is said to haunt the castle, particularly near the well, and is seen by guests and staff alike. Her story represents a forgotten injustice, her ghost a poignant reminder of a life unjustly taken and perhaps never officially accounted for. The echoes of muffled cries or the rattling of chains in remote cellars, cold spots in unused passages, or the overwhelming sense of dread in areas that were once used as solitary confinement, are all phenomena attributed to these lost souls. Their spectral presence is often interpreted as a desperate attempt to communicate their fate, to be remembered, or to seek an acknowledgement that was denied in life. Even more intriguing are the ghosts said to be trying to reveal an unsolved crime or expose a long-buried truth. Castles were centers of power, and power often bred secrets. Plots, conspiracies, hidden alliances, and scandalous affairs could all be concealed within their walls. If someone was murdered, or a great injustice committed, and the perpetrator was never brought to justice, the victim's spirit might remain, restless and tormented, forever attempting to bring the truth to light. These are the ghosts who might appear to a sensitive visitor, perhaps whispering a name, or gesturing towards a particular hidden compartment. They might be seen near the site of their death, or in a specific chamber where their secret was born. The motivations attributed to such spirits are often a desperate need for justice, a final act of vengeance, or a plea for their story to finally be told. Think of the story of the Green Lady of Fyvie Castle in Scotland. While a Green Lady can take many forms, the one at Fyvie is often linked to the ghost of Lady Lilias Drummond, who was supposedly starved to death in a secret chamber by her husband after failing to provide him with a male heir. Her ghostly cries are heard, and strange green lights are seen around the castle, a tragic echo of a woman who suffered a slow, agonizing death, and whose suffering remains unacknowledged. The green might even symbolize the decay or the grim nature of her demise. The narratives of these secret-holding ghosts often involve specific locations within the castle. Secret passages and hidden chambers. Many castles had these for strategic purposes, escape routes, surveillance points, or places to hide valuables. These are naturally fertile ground for legends of forgotten souls or concealed hoards. A sudden draft in a seemingly sealed wall, or a faint scent of old dust in a modern corridor, can be attributed to the lingering presence of those who once knew these secret routes. Undermined walls or collapsed sections. Sometimes, the secret is revealed by the gradual decay of the castle itself, or by restoration work. The discovery of a hidden space, a forgotten skeleton, or an ancient artifact can immediately fuel a ghostly legend, connecting the found object or remains to a long-held castle mystery. These ghostly legends are not just about fear. They speak to our innate human desire for justice, for truth, and for the resolution of unfinished narratives. They remind us that history is not always neatly packaged, and that some stories, no matter how old, continue to resonate with a powerful, unresolved energy. The ghosts of castle secrets challenge us to look beyond the obvious, to listen for the whispers of the past, and to wonder what other truths might still lie hidden behind the ancient, silent stones. As we unravel these enigmatic tales, we next turn to the most iconic and frequently reported female apparitions in castles: the White Ladies and Black Ladies. These spectral women, often tragic figures from the past, represent different facets of sorrow, love, and vengeance, and their stories are among the most poignant and persistent in castle folklore. So, join me as we explore the elegant, yet heartbreaking, dance of these enduring female spirits. We turn our attention to perhaps the most iconic, and often most poignant, figures in castle folklore: the spectral women, often known as the White Ladies and the Black Ladies. These apparitions, representing different facets of sorrow, love, and vengeance, are among the most persistent and deeply emotional haunting narratives associated with ancient fortresses. Castle folklore is replete with stories of women, often noble, who met tragic fates and are said to linger within the walls that once contained their lives. These figures are powerful because they resonate with universal themes of love, loss, betrayal, and injustice. While their exact appearance and motivations vary, the White Lady and Black Lady archetypes represent distinct, yet equally compelling, forms of spectral manifestation. The White Lady is perhaps the most ubiquitous female ghost in European castle lore. Her image is instantly recognizable, an ethereal figure, often dressed in white or pale clothing, seen gliding through ancient halls, standing forlornly by windows, or weeping silently in moonlit courtyards. The stories behind these White Ladies are almost invariably tales of tragic love, unrequited devotion, or profound betrayal. Awaiting a lost love, many White Ladies are said to be the spirits of women who were left behind by their beloveds, knights who went to war and never returned, or husbands who simply abandoned them. They are forever waiting, their devotion so strong that it transcends death. Imagine a young bride, standing at a turret window, perpetually gazing out across the lands, waiting for the glimpse of a banner that will never appear. This is the essence of many White Lady legends. Dying of a broken heart, some White Ladies are victims of thwarted love affairs, arranged marriages that separated them from their true loves, or unfaithfulness that led to a premature demise. Their despair is so profound that their sorrow clings to the castle. Victims of injustice or entrapment, while not always violent, some White Ladies died from slow starvation, illness, or heartbreak while being imprisoned in a tower or chamber, often for defying a powerful male relative or for a perceived slight. Their white attire might symbolize their purity, or their innocence in the face of injustice. One of the most famous white ladies is associated with Berlin City Palace. Though now largely demolished, the legend persists, and numerous Hohenzollern castles across Germany. This is Countess Agnes of Orlamund, who, according to legend, accidentally killed her children in a fit of rage or despair when her husband accused her of infidelity. Her spirit, clad in white, is said to appear before misfortunes or deaths in the Hohenzollern family. This legend highlights a common theme: the White Lady as an omen, a harbinger of significant events, particularly those involving the family she was once part of. Another poignant example is the White Lady of the Château de Camargue in France. The legend speaks of a young noblewoman who fell in love with the poor knight. Her father, furious, had the knight killed and imprisoned his daughter in the castle's highest tower. She died of grief, and her ghostly figure is said to still be seen in the tower, sometimes calling out her lover's name, a timeless lament for lost love and freedom. In contrast to the mournful beauty of the White Lady, the Black Lady apparitions often carry a different, more ominous, and sometimes vengeful aura. Clad in black or dark attire, these spirits are typically associated with profound grief, curses, vengeance, or malevolent intent. Grief and mourning. A Black Lady might be the spirit of a woman who died of overwhelming sorrow, perhaps after losing her entire family to war, plague, or murder. Her black garments symbolize her perpetual mourning, a shadow of unending grief. Vengeance and curses. Some Black Ladies are said to be the spirits of women who were wronged in life and returned to exact revenge. They might have been victims of betrayal, infidelity, or a violent act for which justice was never served. Their appearances can be unsettling, even threatening, acting as guardians against trespassers or as avengers against those who committed similar wrongs. Evil intent. In darker folklore, a Black Lady might be linked to witchcraft, pacts with evil, or a malicious nature in life. Her presence might bring misfortune or actively seek to harm the living. A compelling example of a Black Lady legend is found at Castle of Cactus in Slovakia, infamous as the supposed home of Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess. While Bathory herself was a real historical figure accused of torturing and murdering hundreds of young women, some local folklore tells of a Black Lady, ghost, distinct from Bathory herself, who is said to haunt the castle. This apparition is sometimes described as a spectral guard of hidden treasure, or as a lingering evil presence from the castle's dark past, possibly connected to the horrors committed within its walls. This interpretation, while distinct from the Countess, serves to externalize and embody the lingering malevolence of the castle's history. The motivations behind these female spirits often delve into the complexities of women's roles in medieval society. While noble women held significant responsibilities, their personal agency was often limited by patriarchal structures, arranged marriages, and the constant threat of violence or political maneuvering. Their stories as ghosts, therefore, can be seen as a posthumous reclaiming of agency, a way for them to express emotions or seek justice that was denied to them in life. They become eternal symbols of endurance, suffering, or righteous anger. The sensory experiences associated with these apparitions can be quite profound. Beyond visual sightings, visitors to castles haunted by White or Black Ladies often report sudden chills, a feeling of coldness, even in warm rooms, a common sign of a spectral presence. The scent of old perfume or flowers, a lingering fragrance, sometimes associated with the deceased woman's personal scent. Faint weeping or humming, the sound of disembodied sorrow or a melancholic tune. A sense of overwhelming sadness or dread, an emotional resonance that overwhelms visitors in specific areas, reflecting the spirit's enduring emotional state. These stories, passed down through generations, are more than just local legends. They are part of the castle's living history. They remind us that behind every ancient stone, there is a human story, often one of profound emotion and enduring consequence. The white and black ladies of castle lore serve as haunting reminders of lives lived with intensity, loves lost with despair, and injustices that perhaps, even death, cannot entirely erase. As we move forward in our spectral journey, we will shift from the specific figures of the white and black ladies to the more general, yet equally powerful, category of military ghosts. We turn our attention to another powerful and deeply ingrained archetype in castle folklore: the knights and soldiers, the spectral guardians and the restless spirits of a military past. These are the apparitions of warriors who lived and died by the sword, whose loyalty, courage, or tragic demise binds them to the very walls they once defended or assaulted. Medieval castles were fundamentally military strongholds. They were built for war, garrisoned by soldiers, and frequently subjected to sieges and battles. It is therefore unsurprising that many of the most dramatic and widely reported castle hauntings involve the figures of knights, men-at-arms, archers, and even entire phantom armies. The belief is that the immense energy, the raw fear, the courage, and the sheer violence of medieval conflict can leave an indelible imprint on the environment, manifesting as spectral echoes of the past. One of the most common forms of military haunting is the ghost of the dutiful sentinel or loyal knight. These are spirits said to be eternally bound to their posts, still carrying out their duties even in death. You hear tales of phantom guards on ramparts. Witnesses report seeing figures in period armor standing on battlements or patrolling castle walls, only to vanish into thin air. These are believed to be the spirits of guards who perhaps died at their posts, or whose loyalty was so strong that they continued their vigil. Knights in armor, apparitions of knights, sometimes headless, sometimes whole, are frequently reported in keeps, great halls, or even dungeons. These might be lords who died in battle, or knights who were particularly dedicated to their liege. Their presence is often solemn, purposeful, as if still defending their domain. The Grey Lady of Greencastle, Northern Ireland, is said to be the ghost of a Spanish soldier who died during a failed siege and still roams the ruins, perhaps searching for his lost comrades or perpetually guarding a strategic point. Similarly, at Powys Castle in Wales, there are reports of a ghostly drummer boy, believed to have died while hiding in the castle during a siege, his drum rolls still faintly heard. Beyond individual figures, some castles are famously associated with phantom battles, or the sounds of war. This is a particularly eerie phenomenon, where the sounds of ancient conflict, the clang of swords, the shouts of men, the whinnying of horses, the thud of siege engines, are heard long after the battles were fought. Dover Castle in England, with its extensive military history, has numerous reports of disembodied shouts and screams, believed to be the echoes of its many sieges. Edinburgh Castle in Scotland, perched atop an extinct volcano, is famed not just for its specific ghosts, like the Lone Piper, but for its general aura of ancient conflict. Visitors and staff have reported hearing drumming sounds, ghostly pipes, and even the sounds of battle from centuries past, suggesting that the raw energy of past conflicts has imprinted itself on the very rock. The belief here is that the collective trauma and intensity of a large-scale battle can create a residual haunting, a repeating playback of the events, rather than an intelligent spirit. The tragic stories of warriors who perished in vain or under unfortunate circumstances also give rise to many military ghost legends. The Headless Cavalier is a recurring figure in British castle lore, often linked to Civil War battles. These are the spirits of soldiers who lost their lives in the fighting. Their headless forms a grim reminder of the brutal injuries sustained in close combat. Soldiers buried under the castle, sometimes fallen soldiers, particularly those killed during a siege, might be hastily buried within the castle grounds or beneath its walls. Their restless spirits might then wander, seeking a proper burial, or simply unable to leave the place of their untimely death. Betrayed commanders. A commander who was betrayed during a battle or siege, leading to his death and the fall of the castle, might return, forever lamenting his fate or seeking to warn future generations. The enduring fascination with these military ghosts speaks to our collective memory of sacrifice, heroism, and the profound cost of war. These apparitions remind us that behind every historical victory or defeat were countless individual lives, often cut short. The spectral knight in shining armor, the weary sentinel, or the echoing sounds of a forgotten skirmish serve as poignant reminders of the castle's true purpose and the human drama that unfolded within its military confines. They are a testament to the fact that courage, loyalty, and the ultimate sacrifice can leave an indelible mark on a place. Experiencing a military haunting can be particularly unsettling. The sounds of battle, even phantom ones, can be incredibly disorienting and frightening. The sight of a shadowy figure in armor, especially one that vanishes or moves with a deliberate purpose, can leave a lasting impression. These are not merely passive observations. They are often deeply immersive experiences that connect the living directly to the violent past of the castle. In understanding these phenomena, it's worth considering the psychological impact of such places. Castles, having seen so much violence and death, naturally evoke a certain atmosphere. The power of suggestion, combined with unusual acoustics or natural phenomena, can contribute to the perception of military hauntings. However, for those who claim to have experienced them, the vividness and specific details of the encounters often transcend simple explanation. Having explored the spectral echoes of battle and the unyielding vigil of fallen warriors, we now turn to a more amorphous, yet equally unsettling, category of castle hauntings: the strange sounds and unexplained phenomena often attributed to poltergeists. This is where the unseen forces make themselves known through physical disturbances, objects moving, knocks on walls, disembodied voices, rather than clear apparitions. We delve into a type of haunting that is often less about visual apparitions and more about a palpable, unsettling presence that interacts with the physical world in mysterious ways: strange sounds and phenomena often attributed to poltergeists. These are the stories where the unseen forces make themselves known through disembodied noises, inexplicable movement of objects, and chilling atmospheric shifts, turning the very fabric of the castle into a canvas for the unknown. While many castle ghost stories focus on the visual sighting of a specific historical figure, a significant number of reports involve phenomena that suggest a powerful, yet often unseen, presence. This is where the concept of a poltergeist often comes into play. Unlike a residual haunting or an intelligent haunting, a poltergeist haunting typically involves physical disturbances, sounds, movements, and sometimes even attacks that seem to emanate from an unseen source. While the term poltergeist often brings to mind mischievous or malevolent entities, in castles, these phenomena are more frequently linked to the restless energy of past inhabitants or intense historical events. Let's explore the chilling array of unexplained sounds that permeate many haunted castles. Disembodied footsteps, perhaps the most common and unnerving auditory phenomenon. Witnesses report the sound of heavy boots, hurried shuffling, or light, hurried steps on stone floors, wooden stairs, or empty corridors where no one is present. These footsteps often follow a distinct pattern, as if an unseen person is pacing, ascending stairs, or simply moving through the castle. Whispers and muffled voices, faint, indistinct murmurs, sometimes just beyond the edge of hearing, can be deeply unsettling. Occasionally, clearer words or phrases, often in an archaic language, are reported, creating a profound sense of intrusion from the past. These whispers might emanate from empty rooms, dark corners, or even seem to originate from thin air. Cries, moans, and screams, in castles with a history of violence or suffering, the sounds of distress are particularly prevalent. Faint moans from dungeons, distant cries from battlements, or sudden, sharp screams echoing through the night are attributed to the lingering pain of those who died tragically within the walls. The clang of chains or weapons, in military strongholds, the phantom sounds of rattling chains, the clang of swords, or the dull thud of heavy objects are often heard, particularly in areas once used as armories, dungeons, or guard posts. These sounds connect directly to the castle's martial past and its history of imprisonment and conflict. Eerie music or singing, sometimes the sounds are more melodic, yet still unnerving. Faint strains of ancient music, the distant playing of a lute, or the ethereal sound of a woman singing a melancholic tune can be heard in areas where cultural life once thrived, perhaps the ghostly echo of a forgotten minstrel or a lonely lady. Beyond sounds, poltergeist activity in castles often involves physical disturbances. Moving objects. Small objects might be found displaced, furniture might be subtly shifted, or doors and windows might open and close on their own. While easily dismissed as drafts or old mechanisms, consistent and inexplicable movements can be profoundly unsettling. Knocks, raps, and bangs. Unexplained knocking sounds on walls, doors, or furniture, sometimes in response to questions, often described as intelligent responses, are classic poltergeist phenomena. These can range from soft raps to loud, startling bangs that resonate through the ancient stone. Flickering lights, in modern times in castles that have been electrified, inexplicable power surges, lights turning on and off, or flickering bulbs are sometimes attributed to an unseen energy manipulating the environment. Sudden cold spots and temperature drops. One of the most common physical sensations reported in haunted locations is a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature, creating a distinct, cold spot that feels profoundly unnatural. This is often interpreted as the immediate presence of a non-corporeal entity drawing energy from its surroundings. Unusual scents, lingering smells that have no apparent source, such as old tobacco smoke, fragrant perfume, the scent of burning wood, or even the sickly sweet smell of decay, can be attributed to a ghostly presence, bringing with it an atmospheric reminder of the past. Feelings of being watched or touched. Many visitors to haunted castles report a profound sense of unease, a feeling of being observed when no one is around, or even phantom touches, a brush against the arm, a tug on clothing, or a cold breath on the neck. The nature of poltergeist activity in castles often differs from the typical understanding of a poltergeist. While modern poltergeist cases are often attributed to psychokinetic energy unconsciously generated by a living person, often an adolescent, in historical castles, these phenomena are more commonly seen as a manifestation of residual energy, an imprint of past events, or the activity of spirits without a clear visual form. The castle itself, having absorbed centuries of human emotion and energy, might act as a conduit for these manifestations. One famous example often cited for poltergeist-like activity is Chillingham Castle in Northumberland, England. Beyond its apparitions, it's notorious for unexplained cold spots, footsteps, and rattling chains, often attributed to the Blue Boy, or other tortured spirits. The sounds of doors slamming shut when no one is near, or objects being moved, contribute to its reputation as one of Britain's most actively haunted castles. The scientific community often seeks rational explanations for these phenomena. Infrasound, low-frequency sound waves, inaudible to the human ear but capable of causing feelings of unease, anxiety, and even visual disturbances, like vibrating eyeballs, can be generated by natural phenomena, wind, earthquakes, or mechanical sources and might explain some auditory and sensory experiences. Electromagnetic fields, EMF fluctuations in electromagnetic fields, even at low levels, have been linked to feelings of paranoia, being watched, or hearing voices. Old castles, with their unique electrical systems or lack thereof, might have natural EMF anomalies, temperature anomalies, variations in air currents, structural drafts, or the natural properties of stone can create localized cold spots. Psychological factors. The power of suggestion, the eerie atmosphere of an old castle, and heightened emotional states can lead individuals to misinterpret sensory input or even hallucinate. However, for those who experience the consistent, undeniable phenomena, these rational explanations often fall short. The sheer consistency of reports across different witnesses, sometimes over centuries, challenges purely conventional explanations. These noisy ghosts remind us that the castle's history isn't just about what we can see, it's about what we can hear, feel, and perceive, creating a profound, multisensory connection to the past. Having felt the unseen forces at play within the castle, we now turn our attention to a truly unique and often overlooked category of castle hauntings: the spectral animals. From loyal dogs to phantom horses, these creatures, often as much a part of castle life as humans, are also said to linger, leaving their own distinct imprints on the ancient stones. We turn to a unique, often overlooked, but no less captivating category of castle hauntings: the spectral companions, the animal ghosts and phantom creatures. These are the loyal dogs, magnificent horses, or even more unusual beasts, whose spirits are said to linger within the ancient walls, adding another layer of mystery and affection to the castle's spectral tapestry. And the tapestry of medieval life, animals were far more than mere beasts of burden or sources of food. They were vital companions, integral to daily existence, warfare, hunting, and even prestige. Dogs offered protection and companionship, horses were crucial for travel and battle, and cats, though sometimes viewed with suspicion, played a practical role in controlling vermin. Given their close integration into human lives, it stands to reason that if human spirits can linger, so too might the spirits of these beloved or significant creatures. Castle folklore, indeed, is rich with tales of spectral animals, adding a fascinating dimension to their haunting narratives. Perhaps the most common type of animal ghost found in castles are phantom dogs. These loyal companions, who often died defending their masters or simply from old age within the castle walls, are said to continue their vigil. Loyal guardians. Many legends speak of ghostly dogs seen patrolling courtyards or guarding specific rooms, often the bedchambers of their former owners. They might be heard barking faintly, whimpering, or the soft padding of their paws on stone floors. These are often seen as benevolent presences, still fulfilling their duty to protect the castle and its inhabitants. Mournful companions. Some ghostly dogs are associated with tragic human figures. If a lord or lady died a lonely death, their loyal canine companion might remain, forever waiting for their master to return. The ghost of a dog might be seen lying at the foot of a spectral bed, or whimpering by an empty chair. Famous examples. While specifics can be hard to pin down for many, the legend of Balmoral Castle in Scotland, though a later royal residence, includes a spectral dog that reportedly appears. More broadly, many old British castles and manor houses have traditions of black dogs, or barghest, large, often ominous, ghostly hounds, though these are more typically associated with omens or malevolence, guarding ancient sites rather than being specific pets. However, less sinister variations of ghostly loyal hounds are far more common within castle walls. Phantom horses are another powerful motif in castle hauntings, unsurprising given their critical role in medieval warfare, transport, and nobility. Riders without heads, often associated with headless knights or fallen soldiers, spectral horses are seen galloping through courtyards, sometimes ridden by their ghostly masters, sometimes riderless. The sound of their hooves echoing on unseen cobblestones is a common report. War horses and cavalry. In castles that witnessed significant battles, The spectral sounds of charging cavalry can be reported, often part of the broader phantom battle. The thundering hooves, the snorting of unseen steeds, and the jingling of phantom tack can create an incredibly immersive and chilling auditory experience. Stables and courtyards. These are the most likely places to encounter a ghostly horse. The faint scent of hay or horse dung, cold spots, or the sudden sound of a whinny or a stomp might indicate the lingering presence of a long-dead stable resident. Beyond dogs and horses, castle folklore occasionally features more unusual spectral animals. Phantom cats. Though less common than dogs or horses, given their independent nature, a ghostly cat might be associated with a specific lady or a particularly well-loved pet. They might be seen as shadowy forms slinking through dark corridors or heard purring in an empty room. Given their role in vermin control, a castle cat might also be seen as still carrying out its duty. Birds, less frequent still, but some legends might involve ghostly birds, perhaps owls hooting ominously from the ruins, or ravens associated with the historical event. The creatures of the dungeon. In the darkest corners of castle lore, some tales might involve more monstrous or ambiguous animal-like forms, sometimes attributed to mutated creatures that perished in forgotten dungeons, or even elemental spirits taking on bestial forms within the castle's oldest, most desolate parts. These are often more localized and rooted in deeply ancient, pre-Christian beliefs. The phenomenon of animal ghosts raises interesting questions about the nature of consciousness and the afterlife. If spirits linger, does that apply only to humans? Or do our loyal companions share in that ethereal existence? The fact that these stories are so widespread suggests a deep human connection to animals, a recognition of their integral role in our lives, and a desire for that bond to transcend even death. These stories often stem from a sense of deep affection and loyalty. A ghostly dog might be the manifestation of a human's enduring love for their pet, or the animal's unwavering devotion to its master. They add a poignant, sometimes comforting, layer to the castle's spectral narratives, reminding us that the echoes of the past are not solely human. They encompass all life that once thrived within these ancient walls. Having explored the animal companions that might still roam the castle, we now turn to the human characters who were central to its everyday life, yet often existed in the background of grand historical narratives. We turn our focus to another poignant category of castle spirits, the castle's working ghosts, the spectral echoes of servants, guards, and the unseen laborers. These are the persistent presences of those whose tireless efforts kept the castle running, from the bustling kitchens to the lonely guard posts, whose loyalty or unfinished tasks are said to bind them to their stations even in death. We highlighted the immense and diverse workforce required to operate a medieval castle. It wasn't just the lord and lady, or a handful of knights. It was a teeming microcosm of society, filled with cooks, scullery maids, stable hands, blacksmiths, laundresses, chambermaids, gardeners, and countless guards. These were the hands and feet that kept the mighty fortress alive, day in and day out. While their names might not be recorded in grand historical chronicles, their lives were no less vital, and their presence, according to folklore, often lingers long after their earthly duties ceased. Unlike the dramatic apparitions of murdered royalty or heartbroken ladies, the ghosts of castle workers are often more subtle, their presence tied to the mundane, repetitive tasks they performed in life. Their hauntings are less about grand tragedy and more about a persistent, almost mechanical, echo of their former lives. Let's explore some of the most common types of spectral laborers. Kitchen and scullery ghosts. The castle kitchen was a hot, noisy, and incredibly busy place. It was a realm of constant activity, long hours, and physically demanding work. It's therefore not surprising that many castle kitchens are said to be haunted by their former cooks and scullery maids. Phantom smells. Visitors often report the distinct, inexplicable smells of roasting meat, baking bread, or stale grease in kitchens that have been disused for centuries or are now museum pieces. This olfactory haunting is often attributed to the lingering presence of a busy medieval cook. Disembodied sounds, the clatter of pots and pans, the faint murmuring of voices, the rhythmic chopping of vegetables, or the creak of unseen footsteps are frequently reported, giving the impression that the kitchen is still operating, even when empty. The cook's ghost. Sometimes, a shadowy figure or a fleeting apparition of a man or woman in period kitchen attire is seen, perhaps bending over a phantom fire or moving between work tables. These are often considered the spirits of cooks who died at their station, or whose passion for their work binds them to the kitchen. Guards and sentinels. The guards were the eyes and ears of the castle, their lives often solitary and dangerous. Their duty was paramount, and their hauntings often reflect that unwavering commitment. The headless guard, a common trope. The headless guard is often the ghost of a sentinel who died in battle or was executed at his post. He continues his patrol, a grim, silent protector. Footsteps and rattling keys. In gatehouses, guardrooms, and along battlements, the sounds of heavy, deliberate footsteps, the jingle of keys, or the low murmur of unseen voices are attributed to the tireless spirits of former guards. They are still standing watch, their presence a perpetual reminder of the castle's defensive purpose. Chambermaids and valets. These personal servants to the lord and lady spent their lives attending to the intimate details of their masters' lives. Their spectral presences are often felt in the private apartments. Subtle movements. Items subtly rearranged, clothes rustling in empty wardrobes, or the faint scent of old perfume might be attributed to the unseen activity of a long-dead chambermaid still tidying up. Feelings of presence. Visitors to the lord and lady's former chambers often report a strong sense of a gentle, watchful presence, believed to be the loyal valet or lady-in-waiting still attending to their noble charges. Stable hands and grooms. Given the vital role of horses in medieval life, stable hands were indispensable. Their work was arduous but often rewarded with a close bond with the animals. Animal sounds. The phantom sounds of horses, whinnying, stomping, and dogs, whimpering, panting, can often be linked to their human caretakers, who might be heard mucking out stalls or softly humming to their charges. Subtle sensations. The faint smell of hay or horse dung in disused stable blocks, or a feeling of a soft presence, are often attributed to the hard-working grooms. Dungeon keepers and jailers. The grim and often cruel reality of medieval imprisonment often led to a specific type of working ghost. Rattling chains and groans. While prisoners' ghosts are common, the jailer's ghost might be heard rattling keys, or making exasperated sighs, perhaps still on duty, or perpetually tormented by the suffering they witnessed or inflicted. The persistent nature of these working ghosts suggests several possible interpretations. For some, it's a testament to profound loyalty and dedication to their duties, a form of spiritual commitment that transcends death. For others, it might be the echo of an unfulfilled life, where their entire existence was defined by their service, and in death, they continue that pattern. It could also be residual energy, a psychic imprint of thousands of hours of repetitive labor, playing back over centuries. These hauntings often lack the dramatic flair of a white lady or a headless knight, but they are perhaps more unsettling in their mundane persistence. They remind us that the castle wasn't just a stage for kings and queens. It was a home and a workplace for countless ordinary individuals whose lives, though unrecorded, were deeply entwined with its stones. Their quiet, diligent presence is a powerful reminder that history is built not just by the powerful, but by the hands and sweat of the unsung masses. Having explored the lingering presence of the castle's essential workforce, we now turn our attention to an intriguing intersection of folklore and reality. We bridge the centuries, bringing our historical journey into the present day, to explore the modern hunt, investigating castle hauntings today, where science meets the supernatural. How do we, in an age of technology and skepticism, approach these ancient mysteries? What tools do we use, and what questions do we still ask? The enduring fascination with castle hauntings isn't just a relic of medieval superstition. It's a vibrant phenomenon that continues to captivate people today. In an era increasingly driven by scientific inquiry and a desire for empirical evidence, the medieval castle has become a prime location for paranormal investigators, ghost hunters, and curious tourists eager to experience something beyond the ordinary. This has led to a fascinating, often contradictory, intersection where ancient legends meet modern technology. The rise of television shows, documentaries, and social media dedicated to paranormal investigation has brought castle hauntings into the mainstream. Groups, ranging from professional teams with advanced equipment to amateur enthusiasts with just a few gadgets, flock to these ancient sites, particularly those with notorious reputations. Their goal: to gather evidence, to document the unexplainable, and perhaps to make contact with the spirits of the past. So, what does a modern ghost hunt in a medieval castle look like? It's often a far cry from the Victorian seances, though some elements of intuition and experience certainly play a part. Investigators typically employ a range of tools designed to detect anomalies in the environment. Electromagnetic field (EMF) meters. These devices measure fluctuations in electromagnetic fields. The theory is that spirits, being energy, might cause disruptions in these fields. Sudden spikes in EMF readings in an otherwise electrically neutral area are often considered potential indicators of paranormal activity. Temperature guns and thermal cameras. Rapid and localized drops in temperature, the cold spot phenomenon we discussed in Part 16, are frequently reported during hauntings. Temperature guns provide precise readings, while thermal cameras can visualize heat signatures, potentially revealing unseen presences or inexplicable heat changes. Audio recorders, EVP devices, electronic voice phenomena, EVPs, are disembodied voices or sounds captured on audio recordings that were not heard by the human ear at the time of recording. Investigators will often leave recorders running in supposedly haunted areas, or use specific ghost box devices that scan radio frequencies, hoping to capture fragments of voices or messages from spirits. Motion sensors and laser grids. These tools are used to detect movement in areas that should be empty, helping to rule out rational explanations like drafts or rodents, and potentially indicating an unseen presence. Full spectrum and night vision cameras. These cameras are designed to capture light across a broader spectrum, including infrared and ultraviolet, allowing investigators to see things that might be invisible to the naked eye in low light conditions, potentially revealing fleeting apparitions or anomalies. Spirit boxes and ovilus devices. More controversial, these devices are designed to facilitate communication, often by generating white noise or speaking words from a pre-programmed dictionary in response to environmental fluctuations, which proponents believe spirits can manipulate to communicate. Psychic mediums and sensitives. Many teams also include individuals who claim to be sensitive to spiritual energy or capable of communicating directly with the deceased. While not scientifically verifiable, their intuitive insights are often used to guide investigations and provide context to recorded phenomena. Despite the sophisticated equipment, the debate between skepticism and belief remains at the heart of castle haunting investigations. Skeptical explanations. Many alleged paranormal occurrences can be attributed to natural phenomena. In old castles, this includes infrasound. Low-frequency sound waves can cause feelings of unease, dread, and even visual distortions. Drafts and architectural quirks. Old buildings often have unusual airflow patterns that can cause doors to creak, objects to move, or sudden cold spots. Structural settling. The natural creaks and groans of an ancient building as it settles can be easily mistaken for paranormal sounds. Psychological factors. The power of suggestion, heightened expectations, fear, and fatigue, especially during late-night investigations, can significantly influence perception. The atmosphere of an old, eerie castle alone can create a sense of unease. Misinterpretation of historical data. Legends often blend fact and fiction, making it easy to attribute natural occurrences to a specific ghostly narrative. The case for the unexplained. However, proponents argue that many experiences defy simple, rational explanation. They point to consistency of reports, similar phenomena reported by multiple, unrelated witnesses over long periods of time. Intelligent interaction, instances where alleged spirits seem to respond directly to questions or manifest phenomena in a seemingly purposeful way. Personal experiences, the deeply personal and often profound impact of an encounter that leaves an individual genuinely convinced they have experienced something extraordinary. The castle itself plays a pivotal role in these modern investigations. Its ancient architecture, vast spaces, and tumultuous history combine to create an environment ripe for both genuine phenomena and psychological interpretation. The very stones seem to absorb and reflect the centuries of human drama, making them ideal settings for those seeking to bridge the gap between past and present, the living and the dead. Beyond the scientific or pseudoscientific pursuit, castle hauntings also have a significant cultural and economic impact. They drive tourism, drawing millions of visitors to ancient sites every year, eager for a chilling experience. This influx of interest helps fund the preservation and maintenance of these historic landmarks, ensuring that their tangible history, as well as their ghostly legends, continue to endure. The ghost stories become an integral part of the castle's narrative, enhancing its allure and mystery. So, as we conclude our journey through the medieval castle, both real and spectral, we are left with a fundamental question: what truly happens when history lingers? Is it the residual energy of lives intensely lived? The emotional imprint of tragedy? Or simply the powerful human imagination, forever seeking meaning in the unknown? The modern hunt for castle ghosts, while employing new tools, continues to ask the same ancient questions that people have pondered for centuries when faced with the inexplicable in these grand, mysterious structures. And with that, we bring our epic journey through the medieval castle, its history, its daily life, and its enduring mysteries, to a close. We've covered everything from the architectural genius to the spectral whispers in the night. It's been an incredible deep dive, and I hope you've enjoyed every step of it. Thank you so much for joining me on this extensive exploration. If you've learned something new, or simply been entertained, please consider giving this series a big thumbs up and subscribing for more historical adventures. Your support is everything. And as always, I can't wait to read your thoughts and comments on this entire journey. Farewell for now, from the heart of the medieval castle.